Sometimes I'll spend a good amount of time in my head just making up fake scenarios. I mean, doesn't everyone do that? But there's one specific scenario that I keep coming back to over and over again. It starts with me at the park, where we used to do summer conditioning for cross-country practice, sitting at one of the benches near the end of the trail. And in this vision, I'd say I'm in my mid-20s, probably in med or grad school. And sitting across from me are two former crushes from school, Penelope and Amelia, who ironically became friends during high school. We just sit there, catching up about life. They ask me what I'm up to, and in this imaginary fantasy, I always arrive in a flashy car, feeling more attractive and confident than I currently am. As we converse, I showcase the achievements I've accumulated over the years. Perhaps attending an Ivy League med school, maybe having a girlfriend who surpasses them both in every single way. And at first, they seem genuinely impressed by all of this, giving me that moment of validation I've always craved, as if my entire life struggle for approval had finally been fulfilled. Years ago, I was grinding through Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 on veteran difficulty, which, if you've never experienced it, means dying. A lot. But the thing about the campaign is that every time you died, the death screen would display a different quote. Most of the time, I wouldn't really think much of the quotes. I was too focused on the frustration of dying for the 20th time on the same level. But there was one quote that remained in my head for years to come. "You cannot get ahead while you're getting even," by Dick Armey. For whatever reason, this one stood out among all the others. It just didn't make sense to me at the time. But as I got older and kept having the same fantasies, it started making perfect sense. How could I move forward in life if all I ever thought of was the past and trying to prove people wrong? How could I progress if I remained trapped in these endless mental loops of trying to get validation? I always use my imagination as an escape, usually as a response to something disappointing that happened to me. If someone made a joke at my expense, or if something I attempted failed, I would escape by imagining a scenario where I eventually won. The means by which I rose above always changed. Sometimes it was being a top-tier neurosurgeon, sometimes it was being a Pulitzer Prize winner, and sometimes it was writing a timeless song, despite me having zero musical ability whatsoever. A friend once told me something profound. The validation you seek from someone always trumps whatever you feel towards them. In other words, even though you may dislike someone or know their opinions don't matter, you still crave their approval. We're all guilty of this occasionally, even if we don't admit it. I witnessed this dynamic firsthand during my early years of college. There was this one girl in my extracurriculars who I found slightly annoying, and I think she sensed this tension, because she would often ask mutual friends, "Does Drayton dislike me? Is he bothered by me?" And despite our disagreements, she still sought out my approval. This pattern extends to everyone who has ever crossed me. All the people who've laughed at my mistakes, all the people who've dismissed my efforts. I still sometimes hope they'll give me that validation, even knowing there's no real value in receiving it from them. But the truth is, I probably won't see many, if not most, of the people I graduated high school with, ever again. More likely than not, I'll probably never speak to Amelia again, but for some reason I still want to prove to her that I made it, that I rose above all her doubts. Nearly 3 years since graduating high school, I find myself wondering how things could have been different. Have you ever wondered what people would say about you if you died tonight? Would they actually remember you? Would anyone say that you made their lives better? Or if we're being brutally honest, would some people actually feel relieved if you were gone forever? For many of us, we feel compelled to justify our existence to others, like we need a reason to fit in or just be normal. I've always struggled with feeling respected throughout my life, and it genuinely bothers me. I always think that if I achieve 50 minutes of fame, it'll somehow compensate for all those moments I felt overlooked. But why should I waste my entire life waiting for those fleeting minutes to finally be happy? People often say, "It's unhealthy to keep dwelling in the past, bro," but I honestly question that generic platitude about forgetting and forgiving. Because after all, who are we but a compressed archive of our past experiences? Now, I wasn't particularly popular or unpopular in high school. I had some people who enjoyed my company, but I can't really say I built a lasting friend group. I only maintain regular contact with a few people, and even they don't initiate our conversations. I always have to reach out first. I can't recall a period where I felt completely taken seriously. There were disagreements and tensions I'd have with classmates, particularly this one guy on the school bus who would make snide comments. I always believed I would rise above these petty conflicts and make something special of my life. But ironically, that same person attends my university now, and he appears far more socially successful than I am. I remember during my freshman year of college, seeing him head to a house party while my roommate Jake and I were crossing him, coming back from the computer lab after an evening of gaming. From what I observe online, he seems to have won in life. His social media shows prom photos with an attractive blonde, genuine happiness, and probably fond memories of our past conflicts. He might even look back with his friends and be like, "Oh, remember all those times I insulted Draythan? Good times, bro." And that's assuming if they remember me at all. What makes anyone think they'll care about me later? And this explains why strategies like ignoring your crush to spark interest never made sense to me. They simply can't be bothered to care in the first place.
Go ahead, bro. Be my guest. Block your crush for the millionth time on Instagram, and then in 3 weeks, your cortisol-ridden brain will just unblock her. Meanwhile, she won't even notice. You can't force her to care, because she isn't capable of caring to begin with.
I know a lot of people out there have those fantasies where they finally get someone who rejected them to come crawling back, but that's only reserved for the people who are socially impoverished. Most people's lives are simply too fast for them to salvage old relationships, especially if they don't care in the first place. I'm sorry to say, for many of you, you won't have that chance to see someone beg on their knees, wanting you back. The truth is, we aren't even afterthoughts to them. They move on with their lives effortlessly. Meanwhile, we spend years trying to move forward, but there's nowhere or no one to move towards. We just find new people to disappoint us and add to our mental collection of rejections. Even if people from my past acknowledged my achievements, they would just find ways to diminish them. If my high school cross-country captain somehow earned a Harvard PhD, Amelia would praise his intelligence and talent. But if I accomplished the same feat, it would just be dismissed. I never excelled academically to the same extent as the brightest students in my high school. I existed in this weird middle ground, too academically focused for the kids who prioritize sports and socializing, yet too unsuccessful to fit in with the elite scholars in my AP and honors classes. I had skipped a grade for some of my subjects, which led to an interesting social dynamic. While some classmates might have labeled me a try-hard or a sweat for my academic efforts, the genuinely brilliant students I shared classes with viewed me as stupid, to put it lightly. Our valedictorian, for instance, would occasionally make jokes at my expense during shared classes, trying to get validation from the other students. Each day I returned home, frustrated by these interactions, but I never found the courage to stand up for myself. No one else defended me either. By senior year, I simply tried to avoid him whenever possible. I often wondered, if I'd made similar jokes about someone else, would the reaction have been the same? I suspect I would have been labeled a bully, a literal monster. It seems socially acceptable for others to mock me, but the reverse would have been unforgivable. I recognize this mindset reeks of what some might call a beta provider mentality, but it was essentially programmed into me from childhood. My parents always emphasized, just study and become successful so you can make something of your life. Meanwhile, I know I would have been happier with simply normal experiences, a life with healthy relationships during my formative years, where respect was reciprocated, and somebody actually listened to me.
It's like having the demo version of a software, but not being able to upgrade to the full version, the one with any features that actually matter.
Even with family, while my parents do care for me more than other people do, it's still conditional just like any other relationship. I'm willing to bet if I was just some high school dropout who smoked weed in my basement all day, they'd be singing a different tune, which is completely understandable. Truthfully, if you've never experienced romantic relationships or created positive memories before the age of 20, the challenge only intensifies as you get older. And it's just not me being negative either. Research suggests that people's happiness peaks in their early years and doesn't return until they're elderly and on 30 different hypertension medicines. And I picked up on this pretty young. I developed an unusual fixation on preserving my youth and experiencing a normal prom. Throughout high school, my primary goal was securing a prom date, but I kept getting rejected. I kept telling myself that next time, I would find someone to take photos with and create memories that would last. When high school ended, and I had very little positive reinforcement from the opposite gender, barring a few odd situations that never culminated into anything, I thought college would offer redemption. I imagined finally attending a formal event with the girl, desperately trying to recapture that prom experience that I missed. But of course, that didn't happen either. Now, I observe girls that rejected me in high school and college posting travel photos with their boyfriends on social media, and that's fine, I'm happy for them, but they're simply able to move forward with their lives, right? There's no need for hours of introspection alone, thinking about how things could have gone differently. Meanwhile, My most memorable experiences often end pretty poorly anyways. One standout memory from between my freshman and sophomore years involved hanging out with my friend Yusuf. We decided to visit a strip club. Not really my scene, but I figured it beat staying in. That was a dark time in my life when I was drinking pretty consistently and clubbing every weekend. But on this fateful night, after looking around for a while, I decided to get a drink. Long story short, one drink led to another, and the next thing I knew, I was waking up in an ambulance. So, not exactly the kind of story I'd share as an example of having fun. I feel like I'm perpetually waiting for my life to begin, when I'm more than ready to start living now. I sometimes wish I could create memories with someone, good or bad, and feel like I'm actually participating in a normal human experience. Creating these videos, while giving me a sense of accomplishment temporarily, don't completely fill that emotional void, as edgy or dramatic as that might sound. That said, obsessive daydreaming isn't entirely detrimental. Sometimes, simply envisioning success and genuinely wanting it provides decent motivation to get out of bed each morning. I've always embodied the shoot for the stars, land on the moon philosophy. This motto has been in my mind for as long as I can remember, consistently pushing me to make something meaningful of myself. Even if I don't become a top-tier neurosurgeon, I can still become a competent doctor. Even if I don't win a Pulitzer Prize, I can still write something meaningful. Even if I don't compose a timeless song, I can still create something people enjoy and revisit. Some people are driven by fear, others by obligation, but some are motivated by the hunger for recognition and validation, like myself. But coming back to that fantasy in the park, it always concludes the same way. After I finish showcasing my achievements and basking in their apparent admiration, Amelia cuts through my moment of triumph, like she always did.
Okay, and?
And what? I respond, genuinely confused.
Is that it? Is that supposed to impress us?
And then the realization hits me. No matter what I achieve, no matter how successful I become, they'll never perceive me the way I want them to. Because the validation I'm seeking simply does not exist in their perception of me. But that's the thing about fantasies. They don't end, they just restart. Sometimes I'll spend a good amount of time in my head just making up fake scenarios. I mean, doesn't everyone do that? But there's one specific scenario that I keep coming back to, over and over again.
This is a certified PSL classic.